I was getting into the music, Shannon. I wasn't paying attention that it was time.
I know. Nothing. Beyonce is a great hype girl.
So I have a funny story about that. I went to a Beyonce concert while I was like 7.5 months pregnant with one of my kids. And it was the last Beyonce concert I've been to.
So jealous. I would love to see her perform. I bet it was amazing.
It was when she did it with Jay-Z. So my husband and I went together because he's a massive Jay-Z fan. And it was just one of the best concerts ever.
That would be epic. I also am a big fan of Jay-Z. To see them together. Wow.
It was really fun. What an exciting day to be here and look at these amazing women we're here with celebrating such an amazing event. So wow, I'm just so excited for this. I think it's going to be a great presentation, and I know that I would have benefited from something like this when I was a junior lawyer, when I was starting in the field. So I'm
absolutely
hopeful.
And so first of all, we just want to welcome all of our audience members who took the time to join us today. We really appreciate you logging on over your lunch hour to listen to our presenters share their experience and insights as females in the legal profession. I know we have so many amazing women joining us today, so happy International Women's Day to all of you, and thank you to everyone who is joining us today in support of women. Before I get into our introductions, I'm just going to take a few minutes to let you know what you can expect over the next hour. So today, of course, is to celebrate and honor women's achievements, and with the theme of this year's International Women's Day, Embrace Equity. And today's presentation will primarily be focused on women in the legal community, with the speakers sharing their insights on the following: having children, maternity leave, sole practitioners, females in the workplace, judges, mental health resources, and what do we do about it? And we will also have some time, we'll also save some time for some Q&A at the end, taking audience questions. So please, if you haven't already, please feel free to send those in through the Q&A. So I feel very honored to have the opportunity to introduce today's panel. Like I said, I'm very lucky to work with and learn from these three women every day, and I'm constantly inspired by them, not only professionally, but also as mothers and their work in our community. So I'm very excited to hear from you, and I hope everyone else is too. I'm going to start with Margie. Margie has been practicing family law since 2007. She is a collaborative family law practitioner and an accredited mediator who is passionate about facilitating fair and reasonable settlements for her clients. She also serves as a dispute resolution officer for the Superior Court of Justice in Newmarket and Toronto. Margie approaches law in a holistic manner and believes that as a family lawyer, she has a unique opportunity to provide emotionally intelligent advice to clients that will assist them in moving forward with their lives in a better position with the best interest of her clients and their children in mind. Kimberly is an associate lawyer at Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers, practicing in all areas of family law. Since her call to the bar in 2013, she has experience practicing in the areas of family law, criminal, and civil law, as well as wills and estates. Kimberly now practices exclusively in family law, and her objective as a family lawyer is to achieve a resolution as efficiently as possible for her clients, and she strives to do this through negotiations and litigation when necessary. She prides herself on truly listening and understanding her clients and assuring they feel supported throughout the whole process of their family law matters. Next, we have Michelle, who is the senior managing lawyer at Russell Alexander Collaborative Family Lawyers. She's been practicing family law for over 10 years and is skilled in all areas of family law, including divorce, custody and access, property division, child and spousal support, and family responsibility office enforcement matters. Her focus is on creating comprehensive, creative resolutions to family law matters, and Michelle excels at helping clients deal with complex financial issues that arise as a result of a separation. So now it is my pleasure to pass things over to our presenters.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was such a lovely introduction. If you don't mind, let's launch our first poll, which is what brought you here today. We really love hearing a little bit about our audience, a little bit about your backgrounds. And the reason for that is we can help to tailor a little bit of this if we know we know a little bit more about you, and we will try our best. It's hard in 1 hour to get all of this accomplished, but we're going to do our absolute best. And I have to say, while we're waiting for the poll results, Kim, that's basically a glamour shot of you that we had up there. I loved it. I hadn't seen that picture before.
It's really old.
No, no.
My picture is old too, just saying, that was like 5 years ago and 20 pounds later. Anyway, that's it.
We all need updated pictures, maybe.
You're all beautiful. Shannon and I were talking about getting updated photos of the team, because I loved her advertisements for it, but it kind of looked like we were the people in that picture, just the way our names were. And I thought it would have been great if we had an actual picture of the three of us, because we do get together, we do hang out, and we do enjoy each other's company. Okay, so let's see the results of our poll, if you don't mind, Shannon. Oh, yeah, we'll give Shannon a couple minutes to do that. Sorry, I sprung it on you. Okay, poll results. A woman, so 71%, a woman in the legal profession. That is so lovely. I'm so excited. 29% of us are celebrating International Women's Day. 8% of us are a woman in another profession, and you want to hear about the experiences of female lawyers. And I think a lot of this, it's even though we are talking today in a very specific women in the legal field, it really does apply to a lot of other fields. I have a very large family, a large friend group, and it's interesting to hear that across the board. I mean, maybe it's better to say it's sad to hear that across the board there have been a lot of similar experiences. Also, a few of you are a leader of an organization and want to learn more. Kudos to you. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate it. Okay, so a little bit of an intro. Again, happy International Women's Day. What an exciting day to be here. I am so grateful that, this is the topic that we're talking about today. We always, wait for the poll. We always, at our firm, like to incorporate a little bit of gratitude into our meetings. And I think it's such a wonderful start to the meeting. It really sets a positive tone. So I'd like to share my gratitude. First of all, I'm grateful to Russ for trusting me to host this. If you've been to any of the other seminars, you'll know that this is his baby. He hosts all of them. But of course, for International Women's Day, he realized that having an all-female set of voices would really be the most powerful thing. So kudos to you, Russ. Secondly, I am so grateful to be a part of this panel. I can't say enough about how wonderful these women are. They are strong, they're independent, they're businesswomen, they are powerful. It is such a pleasure to work with this team. And I'm not just saying that, I truly enjoy these three people in particular, but also our staff. They're just the best. And then lastly, I'm grateful for all of you for joining us today and taking your time out. So Shannon, do you have the results of that poll? Thank you so much. So 77% identify as a woman, 11% identify as a man, 2% identify as other. And then when we look at the breakdown, a large majority of us are under 5 years. And I'm so happy. I hope that this really helps, especially that group, because I was saying, I wish I had something like this. I wish I had a female mentor when I was younger. And then 11% of us have 5 to 10, and then 16% of us have 10 plus years. And then we have another, a little over 10% who are either students or working in a different field. So thank you so much, everyone, for doing those polls. Okay, so having children. I was laughing when I got chosen for this topic because, of course, I understand why I was chosen for this topic. For those of you who don't know, I am actually a mom of 4, and all of my children were born while I was a lawyer. So I have I would like to say I'm an expert in this field as much as anyone can be. And the decision to have children, when to have children, how many children to have, it's something I have been thinking about for 9 years. So my oldest child is 11, my youngest child is 2. So it's been a really widespread of my career and, in history, even though 10 years or 12 years doesn't seem like a lot of time, really so much has changed in that period of time. What do you ladies think? Do you agree? Margie, I know you've been practicing even longer than I.
Yeah, I thankfully, I've seen it in my own practice, and also when I was doing a little bit of research for this talk today. It's wonderful to see that there are more and more women entering the legal profession. When I entered into it, I've been a lawyer. I was called to the bar in 2022. Anyway, I'm talking about 2002. And there were still a good number of women, but yeah, I think that what I've seen a huge shift in most recent years, especially because of the pandemic. I'm thinking it's because of the pandemic, is more of compassion towards working parents. What we had to go through during the pandemic of, we were really at home with our children while we were working, right? Which is a whole new challenge. But I think because of that, there's been a shift in employers really seeing that there is a need for that balance. So what are your thoughts on that, Kim? Have you seen it?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think the pandemic forced everyone to shift and to have more of that work-life balance. And that might include your workday might have some family time in it. That 9 to 5 wasn't applicable to everybody. I know it wasn't for me.
Yeah, I think I always joke about that video about the male. I forget what he was talking about. He was a scientist or something, and everyone knows it. He's doing an interview. I think it's with CNN, and then his kid comes in the background, and his poor wife comes in and tries to pull the kid out, and another kid comes back, and it's so funny because I was joking that that easily could have been me. It really could have through the pandemic, because everyone was home, and my husband is great and an involved father, but it's just how power dynamics and household dynamics worked out. His basement, his office is in the basement, mine's on the top floor. So on top of working, I was also primarily responsible for the children, because he didn't know, like he just didn't, from the basement, you can't hear. So I empathize with that family, and I empathize with everyone who had to go through that. It was really difficult. So anyways, getting back to the topic, another interesting piece of information about me is that our first child was a surprise. And so she wasn't planned. And if she wasn't a surprise, we would have probably waited a little longer to have a kid. But the reason is that my husband unfortunately had cancer and had multiple surgeries, chemo. It happened so quickly. It was just a whirlwind. And by the time we kind of even thought about children, unfortunately, the effect of the cancer, the chemo, the surgeries had taken its toll, and we were told we would never have kids. Well, sorry, we had a 5% chance of ever having children, which is basically you're not going to have them. And so we got married. We, said it's fine. We're okay. We talked about kind of options about what our lives would look like. And then 2.5 months after our wedding, I got pregnant. And I thought I had cancer because I could feel something inside of me. And I thought, oh my God, this is, of course, cancer was our world at the time and still is. It's cancer, and this is bad. And I made the doctor do 3 different tests, because I said it's impossible. I know I haven't cheated on my husband. I know he can't have kids, and I cannot be pregnant. This is completely impossible. So anyways, after the shock and the awe and the happiness wore off, the panic set in. And I think from speaking to other women, that this is a little bit of a universal thing that a lot of women feel who are in stressful jobs, because you start to feel a little bit guilty. You start to feel a little bit about, how am I going to do this? What is my employer going to think? How is this going to affect my career? How is this going to affect my clients? When should I tell people? What should I tell people? there's so many things that kind of go through your head in what should be a really amazing, wonderful, happy time of your life. And I hope that to everyone out there, if you have a kid, don't feel that way. That's not the right way to feel. And if you are feeling that way, and if your bosses are making you feel that way, there's a problem, and we need to address that. So to be completely fair, my principal was amazing. It was a male, and he did not make me feel guilty, but I had this stress, this societal belief that having a baby was an imposition, and taking time away from my work was an imposition. And looking back, I really wish I had a strong female mentor to talk to me about these ideas and these preconceived notions, and to help me through some of this, because the stress was terrible. Trying to be a first year associate, by this time I was a first year, the long hours, the guilt, the trying to get everything accomplished before going on mat leave was incredibly stressful. And it's not good for you. It's not good for the baby. It's not good for anyone. And I learned that the hard way, because 2.5 months before she was due, my oldest came fast and furious. And I still remember that time where I was in the hospital, my water had broke, I'm at Mount Sinai, I'm in a high risk unit, and I have this team of specialists, like the best doctors around me. And they're telling me, okay, this is it. Like, you're going to have to be in bed in a hospital until this baby comes. We're doing everything we can to keep her in because she's just too young. And I said to them, okay, that's great, but I have court tomorrow and I can't miss court. So I need you just to let me go for like 4 hours. I'll just go, I'll zip out to court, I'll explain the situation, and I'll come back. And the look on their faces, the look on my husband's face was just disbelief and, are you crazy? But it really, and looking back, even I think that was such a crazy response. But it's just that guilt and that fear and that kind of pressure that's put on us. Margie and Kim, I know you both have had children. What were your experiences like when you had that first baby and that first transition and that first thought of, how am I going to handle this?
I think similar to you, Michelle, I think you always feel, is it a good time? Was this the right time? And I think the truth is there's never a good time in your personal life, in your career, whether you're starting out, you feel the guilt of this isn't the right time. I'm just starting. Maybe you're at the peak of your career and you think, well, this isn't a good time. I'm really getting into it. So I agree with you. There is this sense of you're really, there's a lot of conflicting thoughts, I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Margie. Sorry.
When I had with both children, I actually worked all the way up until I was in labor. I actually was on my way to the hospital and said, hey, not going to the office. Guess what? Baby's coming. So yeah, I worked up until the end until I gave birth, and I was on the phone on my way to the hospital with clients. And then once you have that baby, my first baby, I just, that it's an overwhelming, weight of guilt of I should be home with my child, especially since if you're nursing like I was. But I was fortunate at that time. I was working in Boston at a great firm, male, my employers were male. And I spoke to them. I said, listen, I want to stay home for a good part of my daughter's life. In Boston at that time, it's 12 weeks maternity leave in the US, unpaid. But they said, no, we're going to pay you. You can work from home half the time until she's a year old. And I was able to work part-time at home and part-time at the office. And that was really about going to my employer and saying, showing your value to them. I'm a valuable part of your firm. I can still, be part of that, a valuable part of your firm, and still be a mom. But I think my experience was very unique in that regard. But yeah, I was fortunate, and that's how I dealt with it. A lot of pre-planning months before, right?
And that's great, Margie. But that also, it's so funny because you had to go to your firm and take that step and say, hey, I am really valuable. I'm a good team member. You would be losing out if I were to take a year off. So let's come up with a plan. I mean, I hope, and my thought even for the direction of our firm is that women shouldn't have to be in that position. We should have maternity leave policies. We should have things, there's so much stress around that period already. Why make it more stressful for the woman to have to come to management to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Is it okay? Having a really fair for maternity leave policy just gets rid of that issue. And it leads me really nicely into your story about being on the phone with clients all the way up into giving birth. It leads really well into the next kind of topic, which is female lawyers having higher rates of complications during birth. I know that, and this is a bit more colloquially, I did come across one research out of the UC Davis School of Medicine, which is in the US. But I know from my experience that a lot of female lawyers have a higher rate of miscarriage, early delivery, a higher rate of babies in the NICU, and unfortunately, a higher rate of fetal fatalities. And so this study that will be in the show notes afterwards, if anyone's interested in it, it's a bit older, it's 1997, but it really confirmed a lot of the things that I know to be true from discussing these issues with women. And it's that women lawyers working more than 45 hours a week are more than 3 times more likely to experience a miscarriage in the first trimester than women who work less than 35 hours a week. And I can tell you of my very, very close friend group, there are 4 of us, 3 of us have had miscarriages, which is just insane to think about, right? Then the next thing that the study talked about were the long hours and high stress were most commonly associated with women who achieve partnership and associate status, and those who specialized in criminal law and litigation, and who work between 1 and 5 years at their current job. I think all 3 of us fit into those right now, and I'm guessing a lot of people who are here fit into those categories or will fit into those categories when they have their first child. And then it also found that a lot of women are postponing their childbirth until their late 30s, early 40s because of the current model of professional training, career development. It just does not accommodate a woman's role as childbearers. So, such interesting things to think about. And, if women weren't having babies, our society would crumble. We need to have children, and we need to move forward. We need to be able to grow our population. So it's a really important thing that you're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about maternity leave, but before we go into that, let's do another poll, please, Shannon. And so this poll is, if you or someone you know took parental leave, how long did they take? So Kim, would you mind telling us, if you feel comfortable sharing, did you take the maternity leave, and how long did you take and why?
So I did. So with both of my kids, I took just about 14 months. With my first, I was supposed to go back at 12 months, but the pandemic happened and they actually closed the daycare down. So I scrambled with last minute arrangements to try to extend. And then with my second, same thing, I did take 14 months. So I'm lucky.
Lucky isn't it? 12 months
I know.
Right? Again, it's this perception that we are lucky to be able to take something that's a legislated right.
Yeah.
Margie, what about you?
I took 3 months with both children. With the first one, like I said, I was able to work from home part of the time, but just 3 months. My second one, just 3 months, and I went back to work. Yeah.
See, I feel guilty even hearing that.
We don't. Why are you feeling guilty? Right? Again, I know. We have to get past this, and we have to, as women, stand up for our rights. And it's funny, I did a combination of you both. So I took 3 months for my first, but because she was a NICU baby, so she was in the NICU after she was born, I was termed high risk, and unfortunately I was put on medical leave for all the other babies thereafter. So I ended up taking a year for babies 2 and 3, a little bit more, I think, just depending on where, I went back. And then for baby number 4, I took 3 months, but that was my choice. And Margie, by that time, I had learned that I could go to, at the time, management and kind of talk about, you know, how it was going to look like and come up with a plan. So the 3 months, even though I came back after 3 months, I only came back for 4 days for the rest of that year. And I'm still supposed to be on 4 days. I really work 5, but on paper, I'm working 4 days. So let's see those poll results. Thanks so much, Shannon. Okay, yeah, 27%, 3 months and under, 20%, 3 to 6 months, 35% of us took 6 to 12 months, and 31% took 12 months. Sorry, more than 12 months. So it's a good spread, and I'm really happy. I know 6 to 12 months is the highest number there. I'm so happy to hear that. When I was kind of having my first and my second, it was just a given that you took 3 months. That's what you got. So kudos to us all. That's so lovely. Kim, would you mind talking a little bit to us about maternity leaves?
Absolutely. So as my colleagues would know, this topic's very real for me because I just came back from my second maternity leave in January. So a lot of the challenges are very present. So, the first thing is, okay, your parent to go on this maternity leave, and how do you deal with the transition? And this is a hard thing. And I know the lawyers out there will understand this, is your files become your baby. And, you're invested and you feel this guilt about leaving your clients in the middle of their matter, especially with family law files that go on for a long time. There's that guilt. And so, you're dealing with writing detailed memos to other lawyers that are going to be taking over the file, making sure that you explain everything so the client's not left feeling that they have to start over, because it's not their fault that you're going off, right? So you're always thinking of that. How can I make sure that the client is not feeling the transition? And then there's a bit of planning when you look at matters being scheduled far away. I remember having to think about timing and making sure that significant court attendances that were happening, that I was scheduling them well before I left, or well enough after that a lawyer that was going to come in had time to get into the file. And I remember, when I was practicing criminal law, this came up because you're booking trials. And I remember being under 3 months pregnant, so I couldn't tell anyone I was pregnant, and scheduling trials and feeling this immense guilt that I wasn't going to be the lawyer that did this trial. And so, it's something that you have to think about. You can't not. So you're very conscious of the timing. And then, of course, Michelle, similar to you, there's the unexpected. So with my second, I planned on working till 38 weeks. He had other plans. I had some complications. I was briefly unexpectedly hospitalized, and there was this, we have to get you to this certain mark. You need to go on modified bed rest. And so a transition that I thought was going to happen 10 weeks from now really got expedited. So you're dealing with the stress of something really personal happening to you. And then you're trying to also think about your clients at the back of your mind. So I feel like it really, there was so much at play. There's so much about timing and really and thinking about everyone else's timing to make sure that things are taken care of. And I think also this means on maternity leave, you're not also fully turned off. Because as a lawyer, especially if that file is still active, you might have the office contacting you, asking, we can't find this, or do you know, we need help. We need help with something. So you can't just say, I'm going to avoid taking any work calls for the entire maternity leave. So I think that was really hard. I mean, Michelle and Margie, anything similar?
Absolutely. So funny enough, on this last maternity leave, I have a file that I had been doing for 2 years before, and we had a trial date in May. So my baby was born September 29th. I was coming back to work January 1st, and I was supposed to do this trial in May. So plenty of time, I could do it. Unfortunately, the judge had other plans, and at a settlement or a trial management conference, something like that, put us in a special sittings for November. So I had a 1 month old, maybe month and a half And I was assisting my poor counsel who was this was thrust upon. He had not expected to be doing a trial, as I hadn't been expecting for him to do this trial. And we were doing it together. And, I was on mat leave. I had a really tiny little baby, and I was still corresponding with the office, talking to the client, getting the lawyer up to speed, because, I would have prepared him much better if I knew he was going to do the trial. Ultimately, we settled, but we settled the morning of trial. So we were ready to. What about you, Margie?
It's been a while ago. My eldest is 18, so my youngest is 13. But yeah, I think that in terms of when I had my youngest, I was a sole practitioner. And what I did was I planned ahead. I actually stopped taking new files after a certain month. And again, my situation is unique, and I'm not saying that this is something that everyone can do, but I lived with my parents. My husband and I lived with my parents. We had that support. So financially, I made that decision so that it doesn't affect, I could do this and not worry about financially. And I know we're going to get into it. I know there's you're going to get into this, but at the time I took the Law Society's parental leave. They did provide financial support for sole practitioners at that point. And I took advantage of that. But I think the key here, what you mentioned, Michelle, is really having that support. And, I'm so grateful. I know how fortunate I am that I had that support at that time. But I think, if there's anything that anyone who's listening to this takes away from today, is there is help out there. There's support. There are a lot of people who understand what you're going through, and who are willing to help. So get that kind of support. Pre-plan is what I did. I pre-planned way ahead of time, so I didn't have to worry about, files and clients being left to the wayside once I had my baby.
Yeah, I mean, and pre-planning as best you can. Life sometimes has different plans. And then so you're dealing with that, and then it's coming back from maternity leave, like I said, the current position I'm in, and trying to get those new files, and that can be really stressful in private practice, because otherwise you're normally working at sort of a file load, and one file might close, you have another one come in, and it's sort of, you're always at a constant. But the situation for me was, coming back to nothing. And so starting to build that practice again and that file load. And so there's financial implications of that as well. So I think there's not a lot of times in your career that you start at zero. Because even if you go to another firm, there's files you might bring with you. So it's really hard to come back in. And I felt very rusty. I think I said that to some of you. I felt like a fish out of water for a little bit, and I probably still do sometimes. But I think that's probably a little bit more in my head than hopefully my colleagues see.
100%. I felt the same thing every single mat leave, whether I took 3 months or 12 months, every single time I felt like, what am I doing? Imposter syndrome. And it's not. You obviously know we have no concerns about your ability. We love you. It is just this pressure that you feel, this guilt, and it's overwhelming through getting pregnant, to having a baby, to being on mat leave, to coming back from mat leave. It's really difficult.
Yeah. And I mean, and that segues nice into the stigmas around taking maternity leaves. And I think I would hope that they have gotten better. And I love that the panel, there's such a range here of when everyone took maternity leave. And I think sometimes we're the hardest on ourselves. So I think some of these stigmas, I don't know, and I'm sure everyone can resonate. And I don't know if they're actually things that other people are thinking, but I remember thinking people are going to think that I don't take myself seriously as a career professional, that I'm not driven, that feeling of feeling out of touch, feeling that you might miss out on opportunities, promotions, or being overlooked because of that time you took off. So the mommy penalty, so to speak. Feeling disconnected from colleagues or clients, especially, if you're taking a year off, life goes on for everybody else. And sometimes on maternity leave, you feel your life stayed still. And so coming back, and people have forged relationships, and things have moved on. And I also remember feeling when I was going on maternity leave, almost like, am I being phased out? Is there, I might not be getting invites to things. I might not be getting new files as I'm leading into towards the end of maternity leave because, well, she's going off anyways. People thinking that you're not reliable because you're pregnant. Well, she might have the baby any second, or, you know, the way she's carrying, she looks like she's going to go. So I think there's all sorts of this. And I think definitely something that played into me a lot was these stigmas. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys have felt the same way. And I think, no, go ahead, Michelle.
I was going to say, absolutely. It's, you know, it's so funny. We think that we're all having these individual thoughts and we, you know, I'm the imposter, I'm the only one. And it's so refreshing to hear that it's just a thing that everyone goes through. And we, unfortunately, and we need to realize that, yes, it's something we're going to go through, and it is not you. It's never you. It's the fear, the guilt, the blame, shame, you know.
And I think I sort of tried to reframe it for myself. And I said, okay, really, I mean, the legal career, the profession I'm in, I'm going to be in it for a number of years. And so in the grand scheme of things, I really thought, okay, say this is a 40-year career, 2 years off, you know, 2.5 years, 3 years, it's really just a blip in that career. And so I think just reframing at how much time, it's really not that long. You blink and it's done. You look back on it, and I'm sure if you talk to females in the profession close to retirement that did take that maternity leave, I'm sure it's something so in the past that they don't even look at it impacting their career. I think for some of us that are in it now, and I know for me coming back, I feel like it does, but I'm sure I'm not going to think about it then. And Michelle, you touched on maternity leave policies. And so this is something, talking to other women in the profession, and I know with my experiences, many firms don't actually have a policy in place other than what the law requires. And I think it becomes very uncomfortable if you're interviewing for positions to ask what are the policies, because you fear this is going to reduce your chances of getting that job. So I think there's this awkward, the policies are, like I said, it's just law related, and then people being uncomfortable. I know the Law Society of Ontario does have the parental leave policy to assist. So, you know, you can get your 25% reduction in your fee category for fees. You may be exempt from CPD requirements if you don't practice or provide legal services, and they would prorate it if it's not a full calendar year. And then you can be exempt from law pro premium and levies that way. And Michelle and March, I'd be curious, I mean, any of the firms you worked with previously, were there any other policies other than what?
Not for me. I think maybe Margie, because you had created that one yourself, that first one.
Yeah, I you know, once I found out I was pregnant, and you could tell people after 3 months, that's when I said, this is what's gonna, like, this is my plan. And I think, you know, it helps your employer to know that you've thought ahead and you've got a plan. So, but they didn't have any maternity leave policy in place. But then my second one, I was a sole practitioner, which is a bit different. And I sort of, you know, I guess is a good segue to the sole practitioners and the impact on them. For me personally, again, I have a different I had a different situation with my second child when I was a sole practitioner, because I made a decision with my then husband to move into the parents so that we don't have that financial strain. Because for me, I did not want to miss out on that part. And I'm not saying this is for everybody. I wanted to be able to, because the childhood goes by so quickly. And I didn't want to have to look back with regret. I do have regrets later on in my life in terms of how much time I spent with my children. But when they were babies, I wanted to like soak it all in. So I sacrificed a lot in terms of my financial. And I know that you're going to talk about this as well, Kimberly, like sole practitioners and the impact on them. Yeah. I think it's a huge financial impact, right?
Yeah. And so both my maternity leaves, I was considered self-employment. And I think there's a lot to think about, because even in terms of transitioning files we talked about, when you're a sole practitioner, you don't have that roster of lawyers that you can lean on. So you're really having to think about who's gonna get my files. Do I know people that can take this on? And then again, the financial implications when you come back, starting at the caseload of 0, but not only that, you're responsible for bringing in those files, which is very daunting. That's a lot of hats that you're wearing on top of balancing motherhood. And so I think the reality is a lot of women in the profession that are self-employed don't actually take a full maternity leave with 0 files. I hear a lot of women in the profession who just reduced their practice. And so you're still sort of in the game, and that way financially you're not feeling the effects of 0. But I know this can also have implications on EI, because you need to have to factor in how much you can make before EI is going to claw back. So I think as a sole practitioner, you're always having to think of the financial ramifications, because it's not just client retention. It's also in terms of if you have office space, and you know, do you have to sublet now? Do you just let your office sit vacant? You have rent to pay. What if you have that really great law clerk? How do you retain them? Do you have to pay them a salary, or say, sorry, I'm going to lose you? So I think that there's a lot of things to think about with being a sole practitioner. And I think also, you know, dealing with emergencies that might come up. How do you, when you have young kids and you're a sole practitioner, who's going to do that coverage? Again, you don't have that large roster. So for me, I know personally, I always say it would impact my decision to have more kids.
Absolutely. And I agree with everything you say, you know, the financial ramifications, even talking about the Law Society. Did you say it was only a 25% reduction when you're a mat leave?
Yeah.
Like, just think about that. You're not working whatsoever. And it's, you know, when you're not working, when you're in EI, maybe you're not even getting anything. The fact it's another $1,000, you know, plus that you're paying for, you know, the privilege of being a lawyer, I think it's difficult to swallow. Why are we paying for being off? So thanks so much, Kimberly. I think that leads really well into Margie's topic, which is statistics around women staying in traditional jobs and female lawyers in the workplace.
Okay, so statistics around female lawyers. The Law Society did in their 2020 annual report. They indicated the percentages of males compared to females practicing in Ontario. And again, I have to apologize. You know, the statistics are just for male and female. Not really. I think there's a need for more research on how, you know, the LGBTQ community or people who identify as one gender or another gender that they're not born with. But the LSO report says that there's about roughly 56% of Ontario lawyers are male and 44% of practicing lawyers are female. And so despite the apparent, it's like a roughly balanced or increasing parity of women versus men practicing the law in Ontario, there still remains a disparity. Okay, and that's where there's a greater retention of men over the years, and more women than men leave the profession. I think our discussion this morning kind of points to one of the main reasons. There's few women in senior leadership or partnership positions versus men. Women in Ontario make up only about 27% of law firm partners in 2021, as opposed to 73% of partners being male. And if you break down those statistics even further, women of color are severely underrepresented in the legal field. Approximately 28% of lawyers in Ontario are people of color, and most of whom are women. Okay, so there's also further disparity in terms of income. So 2020 study of in-house lawyers in Canada found that women earned approximately $24,000 less than their male counterparts. And the higher the income earned by the male lawyers, the greater the gap. So 42% of male in-house counsel earned an average salary of $200,000 compared to only 19% of female in-house counsel who earned that same level of income. So this disparity in the retention and career growth between men and male and female lawyers is reflective of the problems we have in our industry in terms of practice, right, in industry practice. Female lawyers at times face discrimination in how they're treated by their colleagues and opposing counsel, even though it's not spoken about, right? At the same time, the exodus of women from the legal profession is also probably an indicator of a wider societal pattern where women are more responsible, carry more of the heavier load of childcare and domestic duties, like we've mentioned. And women are also less likely to have, female lawyers are less likely to have a stay-at-home spouse to help support them in their full-time work. So those are the statistics when it comes to female lawyers in the workplace.
Thanks so much, Margie. And even though those are statistics, I completely agree with them. When I started law school, at least in my law school, and I believe throughout, it was more than 50% of the class was women. And as I'm going later and later in my career, especially in these, childbearing years, I'm finding that unfortunately a lot of my female colleagues are looking to alternative careers because it is so difficult. It is so difficult between the prejudices, the caring of babies, the emotional and workload of having to take on more, the pay imbalances. It's just so difficult. So I fully, I can absolutely see those happen.
And I think also in terms of what Margie touched upon is if you don't have a lot of the supports in place, like I know for me personally, we don't. And so I find it's a very challenging career to balance if you have children and you don't have supports in place.
Absolutely.
Sorry, before we go, I know I'm being mindful of time. Before we go to judges, I also wanted to touch upon, female lawyers like myself who are in the, who not only have to care for children, and yes, my children are a bit older, but they still need you. Believe me, they still need you. I still get that knock on my office door, help with homework, but the female lawyers really, or even lawyers in general in that sandwich generation, where now we have to also take care of our elderly parents. My parents are in their mid-80s. And, as years go by, my mom had a stroke about 5 years ago. Thankfully, I have three siblings, and we all sort of share the the duty of helping our parents with, shoveling the snow, like the recent snowfall there that we had, making sure they had enough groceries during the pandemic. But I just want to put it out there that as most of these responsibilities for elderly parents usually fall on female lawyers as well, right? Because we are the caregivers, not just of our children, but our elderly parents. So, that also impacts you, even though you're more, now you're done with the earlier years, the maternity leaves, the childcare of younger children, then you're moving in towards your career. You're really into your career now. You have more experience. You still have the imposter syndrome, still do, always will. But I think that as women in that sort of time in their career, now you have to face the additional responsibility of caring for your elderly parents, which has a whole different slew of set of responsibilities. So I just wanted to put it out there, not to let that it never ends, not to say that, but it also impacts you as a female lawyer being the one that's primarily responsible for caring for not just for your children, but your elderly parents.
Absolutely. And you're so right with the snow shoveling and just things like technology. And I'm always trying to educate my parents on scams. My poor parents, they're so sweet, but they've gotten caught, nothing high level, but in some low level scams as well, which it's tough. You're juggling so much at the same time. You're juggling work and children and life and your responsibilities with parents. And, it's absolutely insane. But I do want to come back. Thanks so much for that, Margie. I do want to come back to young children? Because Kim, I think, I'm sorry, we kind of skipped your part of that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I know we all have so much to say about this topic, and I think we could go on forever about it. But I mean, I'm in that too right now, right? I have a 3.5-year-old and a 15-month-old, and so it's hard. It is like last night, my oldest son was up 4 times, and you're still expected to come and work and get stuff done, and that's really hard. And then on top of that, like I said, it's just my husband and I. We don't have that support system. So dealing with sick days, like I remember during the pandemic, when daycares were so stringent on, heaven forbid a kid have a regular cold. And so every sniffle, they were home for 3 to 5 days because they had to get tested. And I remember I calculated in my first 8 months back, I took 40 days just to deal with sickness for one child. And that, again, as a sole practitioner, that was very hard hitting for me. It's really, really difficult to juggle that. So I'm not surprised hearing Margie's statistics on the exodus of females in the workplace. I think that it's a lot to balance, and you have this idea of default parenting that's happening, right? Women often do become default parents, and so motherhood's hard enough, but we're juggling, the gatekeepers of the home and the children's activities and doctor's appointments. And I think it leads into this internal argument with spouses about whose job's more important, right? Who's the one that should be taking the time off? And I know I feel like if I say my job's more important, does that mean I love my children less? So I think it's a struggle. And I think this 40-hour work week was really designed that there was someone at home full time doing some parenting and cooking and cleaning. It wasn't meant for this two-person working household. And so I think that's something that's really hard. And I'm going to say, I heard something the other day, and I really resonated with it. And it said, there's a societal expectation that you must work like you have no children and mother like you have no job. And I felt that really, really hit home for me.
Absolutely. What a great quote. You're right. Absolutely, with all of those things. I think giving our time, let's move on to judges. And you're right. We can talk about this for another hour. I have so much to say about this, but we do want to be mindful of everyone's lunch hour. Thanks, Margie.
Okay, so judges, good news. Statistically, there's an increasing, again, parity between the number of male judges being appointed versus appointments of female judges. In fact, the last couple of years, the federal government appointed more women to the bench than men. In an updated data first released in January 2022, the proportion of women who were federally appointed judges in Canada increased from 43.8% as of October 1st, 2021 to 45.3%. Comparatively, the proportion of men who were federally appointed judges decreased from 56% to 54.7% over the same period. I was mentioning to Kimberly and Shannon, and early on when we were doing that before this webinar, that I was for this webinar, I was doing some research about judges, female judges, and I came across an article, and I'm going to give the link so that we could give it to the audience later on. But an article by Her Honorable Justice Bertha Wilson, the first female judge of the Supreme Court of Canada. She wrote an article for the Osgoode Hall Law Journal in the fall of 1990. And the article is entitled, "Will Women Judges Really Make a Difference?" And it's notable to, that at that time when she wrote that article, only 9% of federally appointed judges were women. So essentially her Honor's response to that question was yes, because although judges are supposed to be neutral and impartial, they're also human, and they bring to their roles and their decisions perspectives born out of their personal experiences, and female judges can help temper and direct or influence the law into a more, as she said, fully human way, because at that time, most decisions were made by men, right? So I thought that article is very interesting, and it's good news that there are more women being appointed to the bench, and I think that's a good trend. That's all I have to say about that topic.
Thanks so much, Margie. All right, moving on to poll 4, mental health. In your opinion, what are the leading causes of stress for women in the profession? And Margie, are you going to talk about mental health for this?
Yes.
If you don't mind, why don't you start your talk while we run the poll?
Okay, as we know, being a lawyer, being a family lawyer is very stressful. That goes without saying. In fact, the statistics show that as lawyers in general, not just family lawyers, we have as a profession twice the number of people who are depressed compared to the general public. We deal with and as family lawyers, we deal with a lot of, the personal aspects of our clients' lives. I don't know about you two, but I know actually about you two. You guys are very compassionate and empathetic lawyers. And as family lawyers, that's what attracts us to this profession, our empathy, right? And we sometimes take on the trauma of our clients. So there's a lot going on for family lawyers. And I actually found there's a lot of resources available. There's the member assistance program through the Law Society. There's Homewood provides a service for lawyers who need that sort of support. We have a lot of links we could provide to the audience, but I also found a link called www.lawyerswithdepression.com. And it's written for lawyers with depression by lawyers with depression. So I thought that was interesting. There's different articles there that I commend to people in the audience. The key here again is I think a lot of people go through that as family lawyers. We go through a lot of struggles. It's important to really surround yourself with friends. I have a great group of family lawyer friends that we just commiserate about, what it's like to be a family lawyer, because I don't think anyone knows what it feels like to be a family lawyer except another family law lawyer. So I, really establish a group of friends, a support network of people who can understand where you're coming from, and utilize the resources available to you through the Law Society. And at our firm, our firm culture is it's one of the best. We also have resources available to people at our firm. So I think that there's a lot of resources available to you, and we'll provide that in our link after this webinar.
Thank you so much, Margie. Shannon, would you mind showing us the results? Wow. And that's it, right? There is no one. I think what this shows is that there is no one leading cause of stress. I really think if we can summarize today, it's this whole myriad, a web of different stresses that really kind of pile on one another to make you feel like you are in this alone, but you are not. You are absolutely not. And I had kids first in my friend group, but I was very lucky for my third child. It just so happened that the four friends, or the four best friends, we were all off on the same year. And it was such an uplifting, amazing year. So if you can, surround yourself with people who feel like sunshine. It's such a great quote. And people who are going to help you get through that and understand and empathize with those. So what are we going to do about this? What do we need to do as a professional? And I really take this seriously, because part of my role as a managing lawyer is, how do I make the firm better? How do I make the firm better for everyone we have, and also for new talent, for people we want to attract? And so this has really been, it's funny, I have a whole 8-hour meeting about this on Monday. This has really been my focus, is we need to do a lot more. So as female lawyers and more senior female lawyers, I think we need to be more vocal. So attending these seminars, having these discussions out in the open is so important. We need to have plans. Women shouldn't be expected to come up and ask for what they want. There should be policies in place. And Kim, I actually wrote this down as you were talking. It's a great talking point for my Monday meeting, is we should be providing our maternity leave policy to new hires even before they do their job interview, because we want to make sure this fits for both. We don't want anyone to be unhappy here. We want everyone to be happy and to feel like they're really supported.
Yeah.
We need more women in managing roles. We need more female mentors. And my virtual door is always open if anyone wants to call, email me. Shannon will send out the package with all of this information. Please feel free, because, I have some information about this that, I can help walk you through your particular situation. And there's a really great Canadian Bar Association, article entitled "Law's Sticky Floor Problem. Women lawyers having smashed through the glass ceiling are still facing barriers to success early in their careers." Great read. I really suggest that if you have a minute, you read it. And just to summarize, I know I'm preaching to the choir. The fact that each and every one of you took the time to be here, out of your day to attend the seminar, really shows that you've already started thinking about these issues. So kudos to you. Thank you so much for attending today. Shannon, over to you.
So thank you, Kimberly, Margie, and Michelle. It was so nice to hear from all of you. Thank you for sharing your insights and your stories. I've said it before, but I'm so in awe of how you balance it all. So thank you for sharing. We also, as Michelle said, want to thank all of the audience. I know we're running a bit short on time, but just one question that we had from the audience. I know it's a big question, but for a young lawyer starting out, is there any advice you would give to them, or anything that you would say you would do differently in your career?
For me, my advice would be to get a mentor. There's just so much, and it's different. I think we talked about that as well. It's different through each stage. Before 3 months, finding out, when do you tell people, what do you tell people, how do you tell people, the 3 months to giving birth, the on maternity leave, when you come back from maternity leave. It's a multifaceted problem, unfortunately.
Thank you. Anything else from our panel, or just
all I wanted to say for a young lawyer is that if you decide to have children, enjoy it. Because I'm at the other end of this spectrum. Like I said, my eldest is 18, going off to university. God help me. But, I look back and I said, one of my regrets is not spending enough time with them. You can't get that time back. And like Kimberly said, in a 40-year career, that sliver of time, I got back on my feet. I went from 0 to 50, 0 to 100. If I can do it, anybody can do it. But it's take that time. If you have that child, take that time, because the time is so fleeting. That's all I could say.
Thank you, Margie. All right, well, it looks like we are all out of time today. I just wanted to quickly mention Russell is running for the bench election. I can share more information about that in our follow-up email, though. And just want to note, as always, for our audience, there will be a survey that will pop up following the webinar, where you can share your thoughts on today's presentation. We always love hearing from you, so if you have the time, we'd really appreciate that. And as a sign of our appreciation, we will provide those who fill out the survey with a complimentary ebook from our team. And as Michelle said, please connect with us. Feel free to reach out to me at shannon@russellalexander.com if you have any general questions or just want to get in touch with our team. We always love to connect. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and happy International Women's Day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.